The quarterback is the premier position in football, and the SEC is the premier conference in the country, so it just makes sense to make an SEC quarterback tier list for the upcoming season. D tier is bottom of the barrel, and S tier is Tim Tebow's status. Let's start from the bottom. In the D tier, we have Vanderbilt quarterback Mike Wright. Vandy coach Clark Lee pegged Mike Wright as the starter for the Commodores during SEC Media Day, and we got to see a little bit of what he had to show last season. Splitting time with fellow QB Ken Seals, throwing for over 1,000 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 6 interceptions. Wright's mobility is an added wrinkle to his skill set, rushing for almost 400 yards last year. He was able to get the offense moving at times. Each of the only 3 occasions Vandy scored over 20 points during SEC play, he was the starter. That being said, I think Vanderbilt's overall play will be a reflection of Wright's, who has yet to win a game as a starter, and I expect more rough seas ahead for the Commodores. Missouri also lands in the D tier. Mizzou is one of multiple SEC schools that are in the midst of a QB battle. Former starter Connor Bazelak got the hell out of Dodge and transferred to Indiana, leaving the Tigers to decide between quite a few options. You've got Brady Cook, who performed well in last season's bowl game against Army but has seen limited time outside of that game. Then there's Tyler Macon, who saw limited action in 3 games last year and was redshirted. Jack Abraham, a transfer from Mississippi State via Southern Miss, who threw for over 7,000 yards, 41 touchdowns, and 29 interceptions over 3 years with the Golden Eagles. And Sam Horn, a highly touted freshman out of Georgia. The Missouri passing offense didn't exactly light the world on fire last season, ranking near the bottom of the SEC in yards per attempt and QB rating. Although I do think we could see an improvement, my hopes aren't high for whoever wins the starting job this year. Moving on to the C tier, I have Zach Calzada at Auburn. Auburn is yet another school that has a QB battle on their hands with a trio of former transfers. Robbie Ashford from Oregon, TJ Finley from LSU, and Zach Calzada from A&M. Most analysts expect Calzada to start, and I agree, but that doesn't say much for the Tigers. Most people have fond memories from his spectacular performance against Bama, but Calzada was inconsistent at best through the season, finishing the year throwing for almost 2,200 yards, 17 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions after being thrust into the starting spot early in the Aggies season. The good news for Auburn is that despite missing some time, Calzada should improve in the offseason, and with a year under his belt, will likely provide them with the best chance to win games this year. The Tigers will be hoping that Calzada can at least lead them to a win over their in-state rival. Next is Miles Brennan or Jaden Daniels at LSU. Did you say quarterback battle? This might be getting a bit repetitive, but in Baton Rouge, a starter has yet to be named between Miles Brennan and Arizona State transfer Jaden Daniels. Neither Brennan nor Daniels has truly separated themselves from the pack, so I'll cover both. Brennan has had a tough time staying on the field, as both his 2020 and 2021 seasons were cut short due to injury. The good news for Tigers fans is that in the 3 games Brennan was able to play in 2020, he performed incredibly well, throwing for over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 3 interceptions. He has also been in Baton Rouge the longest as a 5th-year senior, bringing experience and leadership to the program. Daniels, on the other hand, provides a challenge to opposing defenses as a dual-threat quarterback. Over 3 years at Arizona State, he put up over 6,000 yards passing, 32 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions while rushing for nearly 1,300 yards and 13 scores. It's clear that Daniels didn't head to Baton Rouge just to sit on the bench, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see both quarterbacks take snaps during the season. Anthony Richardson at Florida also lands in the C tier. Richardson can be summed up in one word: potential. And that's honestly a great word to describe his team as well. Florida has the potential to do great things over the next few seasons with new coach Billy Napier, just as Richardson has the potential to be a great leader on the Gators. However, it's all guesswork at this point. Richardson has the measurables at 6'4", 237 pounds, but only appeared in 7 games last year. His numbers through the air were pretty pedestrian at 529 yards, 6 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. But he added over 400 yards on the ground and 3 rushing touchdowns. It's also important to note he only threw 10 or more passes in 2 of those games. So while the sky could be the limit for Richardson, we're going to have to wait until next season to find out what he can truly bring to the table. Next up is Jackson Dart at Ole Miss. While Dart hasn't been named the starter officially, I anticipate he takes over for Matt Corral in Oxford. Lincoln Riley bringing his quarterback with him meant Dart's days were numbered in sunny Southern California, and Lane Kiffin jumped on the opportunity bringing him to Ole Miss. Last season, the Rebels averaged nearly 34 points per game, and despite losing offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, they don't plan to lose a step. But to do that, Dart is going to need to step up. He was in and out of the starting lineup as a freshman at USC, finishing his season playing in 6 games and throwing for just over 1,300 yards, 9 touchdowns, and 5 interceptions. His upside is undeniable, but he is going to have to prove it on the field before I'm comfortable moving him up on this list. Another transfer takes the final spot in the C tier in Max Johnson at Texas A&M. The Aggies have a trio of quarterbacks that could conceivably start next season, and last season's original starter, Haynes King, LSU transfer Max Johnson, and highly touted freshman Connor Wigman. I anticipate Wigman will be handed a red shirt, so the focus will be on the tight race between Keene and Johnson. Keene was set to be the Aggies' starting quarterback last year, but his season was cut short after breaking his leg in the second game of the season. He showed flashes of brilliance in his sole appearance against Kent State, but it was clear that he was still a work in progress, throwing 3 interceptions that game. While he led A&M to a win last year, his competition happened to beat A&M that same season. Johnson had a great year for LSU in what ended up being a disappointing season overall for the Tigers, finishing with over 2,800 yards passing, 27 touchdowns, and only 6 interceptions. He is certainly a more polished passer than Keene, and despite the battles seemingly being close, I expect Johnson to be named the Aggies starter to begin the year. With the weapons he has at his disposal, I expect the A&M offense to perform much better than last year, which could result in a solid season for Max. The first B-tier quarterback is Will Levis at Kentucky. Levis was a huge part of the Wildcats' offensive transformation, and I expect him to continue those improvements this upcoming year. After transferring from Penn State last year, he broke out for Kentucky, throwing for over 2,800 yards, 24 touchdowns, and 13 interceptions, while adding nearly 400 yards and 9 touchdowns on the ground. One area Levis will need to improve on next season will be his turnovers, but if he can improve his ball security, he has an opportunity to be one of the better quarterbacks in the conference. And although Kentucky did lose 2 key targets, bringing in Tavion Robinson from Virginia Tech will be a huge help to Levis moving forward this season. Next up is Stetson Bennett at Georgia. While he might not come across as one of the most naturally gifted quarterbacks in the SEC, the reigning national champs have the guy they hope can lead them to back-to-back titles. Yet again, Bennett will be surrounded with the best talent the SEC has to offer. And I expect the offense to be rolling on all cylinders as Georgia contends for the spot in the college football playoff once again. Bennett put up good numbers last year, throwing for over 2,800 yards, 29 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. I don't expect there to be much of a drop-off this season as the former walk-on continues to grow his legendary status in Athens. Another B-tier quarterback that could easily move up or down the list this season is Spencer Rattler. Last year was supposed to be the crowning of Rattler as Oklahoma's latest Heisman-winning quarterback, but that didn't go as planned. Now he finds himself at a new school with a new challenge after losing the starting job early in the Sooners season. Despite the apparent regression, it's clear that Rattler is still a talented quarterback. His 2020 campaign saw him throw for over 3,000 yards, 28 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions, while his shortened 2021 season still saw him throw for just under 1,500 yards and 11 touchdowns while completing nearly 75% of his passes. While the Heisman hype has certainly died out, and it's clear he still has some things to work on, expect Rattler to significantly improve the South Carolina offense and put the Gamecocks in a position to pull off some upsets this season. A new start provides him with a new opportunity to prove he is still an NFL caliber talent at quarterback. The first of the A-tier quarterbacks is Will Rogers at Mississippi State. Rogers and Mike Leach form one of the more long-tenured quarterback-coach duos in the SEC, and they plan on producing another high-octane offensive season in year 3. As expected in a Mike Leach offense, Rogers was slinging the rock, throwing for the most passes of any SEC quarterback in 2021, and that generally paid off for him, as he threw for over 4,700 yards, which was good for 3rd in the nation, 36 touchdowns, and only 9 interceptions. He also completed nearly 74% of his passes, which ranked him 1st in the SEC, and was 2nd in completions of 20 or more yards. Assuming he doesn't have a sudden drop-off, I expect Rodgers to have yet another excellent statistical season next year. And don't be surprised if he is near the top of the conference in almost every category at season's end once again. Next is KJ Jefferson at Arkansas. In his first full year as a starter, KJ Jefferson did what Arkansas fans have been begging for. helping lead a program turnaround after a pretty rough 4-year stretch that saw the Razorbacks win at most 4 games in a season. Jefferson has Arkansas trending up, and his play has been a big part of their success, throwing for almost 2,700 yards and 21 touchdowns, while only turning the ball over 4 times. He was also consistently a threat on the ground, rushing for 664 yards and 6 touchdowns. Despite losing some talent to the NFL, Jefferson will have a stable of receivers that should help him match, if not surpass, his great 2021 season. Hendon Hooker at Tennessee also lands in the A tier. Head coach Josh Heupel and Hooker gelled well in both of their first seasons in Knoxville, and could be poised for an even better showing in year 2. In 2021, Hooker started the final 11 games of the season and threw for nearly 3,000 yards and 31 touchdowns. Hooker was also at the top of the pack in the SEC in yards per attempt, which makes his total of just 3 interceptions even more impressive. And if that isn't enough, he's also a threat to take off at any moment, rushing for over 600 yards and 5 touchdowns last year. Hooker will have the benefit of a full offseason as the first option for Heupel, and I anticipate that familiarity combined with Hooker's in-game ability and talent will have him in the conversation as one of the best quarterbacks in the country. Speaking of the best quarterbacks in the country, Bryce Young was the man in 2021 and claims the sole spot in the S tier. In his first full season as a starter, Young nearly accomplished everything. A conference title, a Heisman, but just fell short in the national title game. Lucky for him, Alabama reloads every season with blue chip talent at every position, and he happens to be one of, if not the most talented player in the country already. His stats were insane. Over 4,800 yards passing, 47 touchdowns, and 7 interceptions. Winning a second Heisman could elevate him to legendary status, and don't be surprised if Young matches or exceeds his numbers during the 2022 Nick Saban Revenge Tour. Currently, he sits in a tier of his own, and the rest of the quarterbacks in the SEC have a ways to go to catch him. If you want to see an SEC tier list breakdown, check out this video here, and as always, have a great day and see y'all at the next one.